All right, good evening. Welcome to the City of Newburgh IDA's public hearing on the Grand Street Hotel project. We're going to start the public hearing. Anybody that might have come in the past minute or two, if you'd like to speak, please come and sign in on the sign-in sheet. The one on the left is if you did not speak at the last public hearing. The one on the right is if you did speak at the last public hearing. Feel free to come up and sign in. And Sheriff Vickers, our executive director, is going to kick it off with the language we legally have to say.
Yep, I'll give it a second. Whew. Alrighty, good evening. My name is Sharice Vickers, and I'm the executive director to the City of Newburgh Industrial Development Agency. Today, I am holding the continuation of the public hearing, which was held on November 4th, 2021 at 1 p.m., to continue to allow citizens to make a public statement for the record relating to the involvement of the agency with a project, the proposed project for the benefit of Grand Street Newburgh Property Co., LLC, a New York limited liability company, and FSH Newburgh Hotel, LLC, a New York limited liability company, each and collectively the company. In addition, the agency is holding this public hearing to consider written and verbal comments on the request of the company for a payment in lieu of taxes agreement, the pilot request, which pilot request deviates from the current uniform tax exempt policy, the policy of the agency. Pursuant to Section 8744 of General Municipal Law, the Act, and in accordance with the policy, prior to taking final action and on the pilot request for a deviation from the policy, the agency must adopt a resolution setting forth with respect to the proposed deviation: A, the amount of the proposed tax exemption; B, the amount and nature of the proposed pilot; and C, indicating the reasons for the proposed deviation. At its regular meeting held on November 15th, 2021, the agency approved the issuance of a letter to the affected taxing jurisdictions setting forth the reasons of the proposed deviation from the policy as required by the Act and the policy. This letter was mailed to the affected taxing jurisdictions on November 30th, 2021. The proposed project consists of the following: A, the lease of an interest in the approximately 1.78 acre parcel of real property located at 48-54-62 Grand Street, Newburgh, New York, the land. 2, the occupancy of the improvements made to the existing 3 buildings on the land totaling approximately 79,072 square feet to consist of a hotel, events venue, spa, and dining facility, the facility. And 3, the acquisition and installation therein and thereon of related fixtures, machinery, equipment, and other tangible personal property, collectively known as the equipment. The land, the facility, and the equipment hereinafter collectively referred to as project facility. B, the granting of certain financial assistance within the meaning of Section 85414 of the Act with respect to the foregoing, including potential exemptions from certain sales and use taxes, real property taxes, real estate transfer taxes, and mortgage recording taxes, collectively the financial assistance. And C, the lease with an obligation to purchase or sale of the project facility to the company or such other person as may be designated by the company and agreed upon by the agency. One company, Grand Street Newburgh Property Co., LLC, will lease the buildings and the land, and other company, FSH Newburgh Hotel, LLC, will operate the building located thereat. I intend to provide general information on the agency's general authority and public purpose to provide assistance to this proposed project. I will then open up the comment period to receive comments from all present who wish to comment on either the proposed project or the financial assistance contemplated by the agency with respect to the proposed project. Legal authorization and powers of the agency. City of Newburgh Industrial Development Agency. The agency is authorized and empowered by the provisions of Chapter 1030 of the 1969 Laws of New York, constituting Title I of Article 18A of the General Municipal Law, Chapter 24 of the Consolidated Laws of New York, as amended, the Enabling Act, and Chapter 577 of the 1982 Laws of New York, as amended, constituting Section 913 of said General Municipal Law. said chapter and the enabling chapter being hereinafter collectively referred to as the Act. Purpose of this hearing. Pursuant to Section 859A2 of the Act, prior to the agency providing any financial assistance, as defined in the Act, of more than $100,000 to any project, the agency, among other things, must hold a public hearing pursuant to Section 859A of the Act with respect to said project. Since the proposed financial assistance to be provided by the agency with respect to the proposed project may exceed $100,000, then prior to providing any financial assistance, as defined in the Act, of more than $100,000 to the proposed project, the agency must hold a public hearing on the nature and location of the project facility and the proposed financial assistance to be provided by the agency with respect to the proposed project. Pursuant to Section 8744 of the Act, and in accordance with the policy, prior to taking final action on the pilot request for a deviation from the policy, the agency must adopt a resolution setting forth with respect to the proposed deviation: A, the amount of the proposed tax exemption; B, the amount and nature of the proposed project; and C, indicating the reasons for the proposed deviation. At its regular meeting held on November 15, 2021, the agency approved the issuance of a letter setting forth the reasons of the proposed deviation from the policy as required by the Act and the policy. The proposed pilot agreement would be for a term of up to 12 years, with the company making the payments in each year of the pilot in accordance with the schedule previously published by the agency. That schedule provides that in years 1 through 6 of the pilot, the percentage of exemption would be 90% of the amount assessed on the improvements to be made under the proposed project. In year 7 of the pilot, the percentage of exemption would be 80% of the amount assessed on the improvements to be made under the proposed project. In year 8 of the pilot, the percentage of exemption would be 70% of the amount assessed on the improvements to be made under the proposed project. In year 9 of the pilot, the percentage of exemption would be 60% of the amount assessed on the improvements to be made under the proposed project. In year 10 of the pilot, the percentage of exemption would be 50% of the amount assessed on the improvements to be made under the proposed project. In year 11 of the pilot, the percentage of exemption would be 33.33% of the amount assessed on the improvements to be made under the proposed project. In year 12 of the pilot, the percentage of exemption would be 16.67% of the amount assessed on the improvements to be made under the proposed project. The executive director of the agency caused notice of this public hearing to be A, mailed on November 30th, 2021 to the chief executive officers of Orange County, the City of Newburgh, and City of Newburgh School District, and B, published on December 2nd, 2021 in the Times-Herald Record, a newspaper of general circulation available to the residents of the City of Newburgh, Orange County, New York. In addition, the executive director of the agency caused notice of this public hearing to be hand-delivered to each of the chief executive officers of the City of Newburgh on November 29th, 2021, and posted on November 23rd, 2021 on the agency's website, and also a public bulletin board on November 29th, 2021, located at City Hall, 83 Broadway, Newburgh, New York. Now, unless there is any objection, I'm going to suggest waiving the full reading of the notice of this public hearing and instead request that the full text of the notice of this public hearing be inserted into the record of this public hearing as Schedule A. The comments received today at this public hearing will be presented to the members of the agency at or prior to the meeting at which the members of the agency will consider whether to approve the undertaking of the proposed project by the agency and the granting by the agency of any financial assistance in excess of $100,000 with respect to the proposed project. Written comments. The notice of this public hearing indicated that written comments could be addressed to Sharice Vickers, Executive Director of the agency. Written comments have been received by the agency from about 50 different individuals. I will read the comment that was sent to me by Councilman Anthony Grice, who could not be here tonight. He says, I support this project and the pilot that is being requested. It is the highest and best use of the property that will have a long-term positive impact on the City of Newburgh. While the pilot might seem high, It is on a graduated scale and based on the data in line with what is needed to make this project work. While City Council had no direct input on this RFP, having at least one hotel in the City of Newburgh has been a plan of ours for a very long time before this project. I do urge the developer to strongly consider the need for a community benefit that is proposed by residents and to consider all ways possible to include all of the residents, displaying their artwork on the walls, hosting community events, and other things, for example. I do urge the IDA that moving forward to please consider the impact that projects like these have on our city and to strongly consider collaborating with the local elected officials, having public meetings that are more accessible than the last one, and knowing that you cannot control what speakers say, that speakers are politely corrected during the meeting when presenting outdated or inaccurate information. As I have stated before, it is a whole different scenario to state the city is on the rise and this project will help, as opposed to the city is crumbling and must accept this project. I do urge the residents to please support this project. While the needs of the city are multiple, varied, and diverse, this is certainly not the last or only project that can handle some of those issues. This is the highest and best use for those properties. I will then just read the names of those who submitted letters that I can actually read their name. Some of them are just signatures. Kathleen Valentine, Craig Pelsu, Anthony Vesnover, Nina Horowitz, Christopher Espinal, Paul J. Banks, Aaron Lefkowitz, Clifton Patrick, Kenneth Nelson, Teresa Kraft, Bobby Joe Buell, Barbara Dovacott Latham, Kristen Riley, Cynthia Corsiglia, Paula Tepedino, Kian Robert Hamill, John Delk, Nicole Nazaro, Daniel Brown, Michelle Bosch, Raimundo Enriquez, Alvaro Bustillos, Tiara Johnson, Sheila D. Warren, Dale Velasquez, Isabel, sorry, can't read the last name, Xavier Boone, Jose Alfredo Oliveira, Sean Warren, Catherine Vignona, Natasha Blank, Carlos Navarro Alvarez, proprietor of Kabil and Noal, and Ashley Lopez. And those are all the ones that I could read, that I understand their signature, but in total there are 50 letters that are in support of the project. Now, I will open this public hearing for public comment at 6:14, well, it is 6:14 p.m. right now. By way of operating rules, I'm sorry, let me back up. We will open the meeting at this moment, and we will have the developer, Sims Foster, present, and then afterwards we will have Michael Ndolo from MRB, who is the economic analyst who did the independent cost-benefit analysis and test of reasonableness. And then after they're done, we will open it up for public comment, and I'll read that part. So we will introduce Sims to take the floor.
Which way do I face here, Shia? Okay, good. Well, thank you, board, for your time. I appreciate all that you're putting into this. My name is Sims Foster. I'm the applicant here for this project. And I want to make sure we leave plenty of time for everybody to speak, and I appreciate everybody showing up We welcome this process. We know it's a process as an applicant and are happy to be here. Just a quick background into who I am, who we are. I grew up in about 60 miles from here in Sullivan County, was born and raised there, and spent my career in hospitality, and about 7 years ago, my wife and I came back and started with one hotel, and in the last 7 years have opened 6 hotels in Sullivan County and 2 restaurants. As we've looked to expand, like many of you, we were drawn to Newburgh, to the energy and to what Newburgh is now, and also the potential that it has in the future. Came here and also saw these amazing buildings. Unfortunately, shortest day of the year, but the American Legion, YMCA, and the Masonic Temple right outside the window. We are in contract with Orange County for those buildings and have received conditional planning board approval. We still have to get approval from the architectural, the ARC, but things are going well in that process, and we look forward, hopefully, to having full approvals very soon. The project itself, we are presenting the idea of doing up to 80 rooms, mostly in the American Legion and YMCA building. In the Masonic Grand Temple, there will be a 150-seat ground floor restaurant, 2 large event spaces, a second smaller restaurant on the 3rd floor, and a rooftop enclosed bar as well. And also behind the American Legion, a pavilion and gardens with a food truck style seasonal venue. So that's what the project is. I think some attributes that we would just like to note. One, we're not displacing anyone. The buildings are currently empty except for the Boys and Girls Club, who are in the American Legion, and we are working as hard as we can to keep them there as long as they can. As many know, they're trying to move or are in the process of renovating the building on the corner here of Broadway and Grand. So we're working with them and working well. Number 2, the buildings currently are not on the tax roll. In their 300-year plus existence combined, they were only on the tax roll for less than 10% of that in the early 2000s. And so not when we're finished renovating the project, but immediately if we take possession of them, we'll put 3 buildings on the tax roll in the city of Newburgh. I won't go into it too much because I think Michael will next, but there we be creating jobs both in the construction phase and pre-development phase, and also, of course, we'll be looking at creating at stabilized around 62 full-time equivalent jobs, which really in our industry equates to probably a lot more than that, as there are some, especially in food and beverage, some part-time jobs that equate to 1 full-time job. And we also are very much looking forward to partnering with SUNY Orange. It was one of the first conversations that we had with Dr. Young, and we are looking to, I am the chair of Food Tech, which is a new committee, an organization that will be looking to help the college expand its hospitality and culinary program, and also job training for the hospitality sector. I think the indirect value of this is that, and also one of the challenges of this project, is we hope to not be the last hotel in the city of Newburgh. There are so many reasons to attract visitors to come and stay here in Newburgh, and Newburgh has a rich history of hotels and hospitality. So we are hoping that through this process, even though we'd be the first to do a hotel of this style in a generation or more, that it will encourage others with the same appropriate commitment to community and to the betterment of Newburgh to come and join us and to help start a wave of tourism and overnight destination here in the city of Newburgh. We're applying for the pilot not because we think that our project, on all the things that I just discussed, deserves it because of merit. I'm not applying for the pilot through the IDA because it's something that would be nice to have. I frankly would prefer that we weren't applying for the pilot. The reason we're applying for it is we need it. The reason we need it is that this project is highly likely to not be financed. And by financed, I mean through bank debt and also private equity without the pilot. The taxes in the city of Newburgh, I just learned this weekend, the mill rate has gone down over the past few years, and that's a good progress. But the taxes themselves, I think, are still very high, and I haven't heard anybody in the city of Newburgh argue with me on that. They would be so high on this project on day one that the risk profile of this project would be put in a place that a bank would not take the risk, and the return on private equity would be so long to return that it becomes largely unfinanceable. So as the applicant here, we are just availing ourselves to the system that's been put in place by the city of Newburgh through the IDA to apply for this pilot. There's those that say they like the deal, they like the project, but they don't like the deal. I can understand that. What I can say is what we asked for is what we need in order to get this project done. And we spent a lot of time on this application, and we're very thoughtful about it. And we understand there can be opposite opinions of that, but I'm standing here asking for what we need to hopefully get this project financed and get it open within 2 or so years and start bringing people to the city of Newburgh. I'm happy to answer any questions afterwards, and I appreciate everybody being here, and I appreciate the time to talk, so I'll turn it over.
Thank you, Sims. Next, we'll introduce Michael Nadolo. Now, again, he's with MRB Group. He was hired by the IDA to investigate the application, to research the industry, to ask questions of the applicant. And Michael, I'll let you elaborate and take it from here. Thank you.
All right. So just doing a sound check here. You can all hear me? All right, great. So tonight, I'll just introduce myself a little bit, just so you know my background and how I came into this. But most of it's going to be about financial analysis. I do like to try to break it down. There is some complexity to this, but I do try to make it digestible for a non-technical audience. So I will attempt to do so again tonight. So MRB Group, I will spare you the sales pitch, but MRB Group is a municipal services provider. We do municipal engineering, municipal architecture, and municipal consulting. Smarter Local Government is the division I work for in MRB Group. So we are speaking on behalf of the community, not on behalf of the developer. I have worked in economic and fiscal impact analysis for about 20 years. I've done projects in 25 states. I've done over 300 analyses for IDAs. I've worked with, I think, essentially every active IDA in the state at some time or another, on every different type of study you can imagine. So I've seen just about every iteration you can have. We were asked to perform 2 types of analyses. I'll describe each of them in kind here, in order. Test of reasonableness and the cost-benefit analysis. Both have been reduced into writing and provided to the board for their contemplation during the discussion here. So test of reasonableness comes first. We are asking essentially 2 questions in the test of reasonableness. The first one is it necessary to provide an incentive? And the second question is the incentive requested reasonable? Does it provide a return that is reasonable and specifically not in excess of a normal return on a project, right? The developer needs to make a normal return, and that's where we want them to be. We do 2 tests. Well, we do more than 2 tests, but generally speaking, we look at the debt service coverage ratio, and then we estimate their pre-tax cash flow on an internal rate of return basis. So how did we do this? What was the method? We were provided some financials by the developer about operations and some ratios and expenses and income. We asked for some additional information, which we received, about the capital structure of the deal, how money's coming in, what are the terms of that money coming in, and then what's an overall profit and loss. We had several discussions with the developer team, and then we took that data, we analyzed it, and we benchmarked it against known market benchmarks from reputable data sources. So this is some of the information that we looked at. Average daily rate, that's a hotel industry term for how much they charge for a room on average. Revenue per available room is not what they charge, but what they actually received for an average room. That has to do with the occupancy rate, because of course some of the hotel rooms are vacant from time to time. Cost of goods sold, again, the financing terms and conditions. And then we also asked about other incentives and other types of funding that might be coming into the project. And we know the $1.25 million grant that was awarded recently and was part of our test. What we're trying to do on the internal rate of return side is to say, if you're an equity investor, right, you're someone who's going to be participating in this deal, what is the rate of return that you need to see in order to put your money in this deal, right? We call that the equity dividend rate. We use the investor survey from realtyrates.com in, I believe it was third quarter rates. And you can see that the equity dividend rate for full service hotels range between 7 and 18% and averaged about 12. And just note that the cap rate that we saw was about 9.5%. So that's what we're looking at in terms of what's the market considers a reasonable rate of return. Now we also have things like risk. One of the things we considered is that there isn't a comparable property right now in the city of Newburgh, and therefore the developer is taking additional risk because they can't look at existing market data and know what's possible. They have to guess. So that's one aspect of the risk. We put it together. We looked at their profit and loss, we looked at their capital structure, and we created a simplified cash-on-cash return. You're the equity investor, you put cash in, and in the future you get cash out, right? What would that rate be? We calculated what that rate is. We looked at the pilot payment schedule that was requested. We asked and discussed with the agency an amendment to that pilot request. It was granted. The developer agreed to it. And we are able to find that the test of reasonableness passed. The assistance is necessary and reasonable for a risk-adjusted return. So that's the test of reasonableness. The next analysis, so that's answering the question, right? Do we need to give this assistance, right? That's the first question. Second question really here is, why should we consider this, right? That's the cost-benefit analysis. So here are some of the benefits and costs that we elaborated on from the application from other sources. Of a $21 million project, about 80% would be spent in the county. That's $17 million. And so you can see that top table construction spending in county is the top two lines of the summary. So you have 67 direct jobs, that's on-site jobs doing the renovations, an additional 43 in the county, including the city, for a total of 110 jobs. That's what we're estimating during the construction period. You can see the construction wages totaling about $9.5 million. We do that at the county level because construction typically happens on a broader geography. For operations, we scale down to look at just the city. So ongoing employment at the site, you can see there's a combination of professional, skilled, semi-skilled, and unskilled jobs, totaling 61 jobs. Those 61 jobs are the direct jobs occurring on site at the hospitality operations. We have modeled this through an economic impact modeling software system that tells us this will result in additional 13 jobs in the city of Newburgh. And that has to do with business-to-business purchases and with the portion of wages being spent locally, creating other jobs. You know, you have an employee, they go out in the community, they buy groceries, they go see the doctor, et cetera, et cetera. That creates some additional jobs in the community. So we're modeling out ongoing jobs at about 47 jobs and $3.2 million in wages. So this is the summary of the economic impacts of the project should it move forward. We then looked at the benefits being provided, and we modeled out what the cost of those benefits are. This table is confusing, I understand, but it's math. So I'm going to skip over something here and just say the estimated pilot is in the far right column. And it bears saying, of course, that today the property pays $0 in tax because it's not on the tax rolls. Should the project not proceed, it would continue to pay $0 in property tax. So the estimated pilot payment is calculated based on a base current assessed value, which would become taxable at $2.5 million, and the improvement value of $10 million. The estimated pilot, based on the proposed exemption schedule in year 1, would be $175,000. By year 12, the pilot payment has jumped up to $684,000, and by year 13, it's back entirely on the tax rolls and is paying about $800,000 a year. So what is the value of this pilot abatement? Again, the property is tax exempt, so there's no tax currently. The project will pay a total of $3.78 million in pilot payments. So you either have $0 in tax or $3.78 million in pilot payments. The most conservative estimate about the value of the exemption is $4.51 million. This is the value that we used in the cost-benefit ratio. However, the city also has a 485B tax abatement. That is an as-of-right tax abatement. Anybody who's a commercial property owner can ask for a 45B abatement. The project would qualify for a 45B abatement. If we compare the 45B abatement schedule to the pilot abatement schedule, the cost is $3.26 million. There is an argument to say that there is no cost to the abatement, because if the abatement doesn't occur, our test of reasonableness has said the project's not going to move forward and the payments would be zero. So this is what we would call a hypothetical cost. It's a cost if the project moves forward without the abatement, which we have deemed not possible. So here's the summary of the fiscal impacts. You have a little bit of sales tax during construction. This is not construction sales tax, which is exempt under the IDA pilot, under the IDA, presumed IDA assistance. This is sales tax coming off of earnings being paid to workers being spent locally in the county. During operations, during the 12 years of operations, we estimate $286,000 in sales tax coming off of those economic impacts I talked about before. On-site retail sales at the facility will be subject to the sales tax. That's an additional $4.2 million. People staying at the hotel will pay $868,000 of occupancy tax. And, as I mentioned before, $3.78 million in pilot payments over the 12 years. So in total, you have total fiscal benefits of about $9 million, $9.2 million. The exemptions, which again could be considered hypothetical costs. Sales tax exemption of 433, mortgage recording tax exemption of 91, and that pilot exemption of $4.5 million, which again, we said that's the conservative way to look at it. It's actually substantially less if you look in comparison to the 45B. And this final table, which is, I know, impossible to read, it is in the report, but I'll just tell you, if you look at all the local costs of about $5 million, sales tax exemption, mortgage recording tax exemption, and real property tax exemption, that's $5 million. There are total local benefits of $57 million. Most of that is earnings to the jobs creating during construction period and during operations. But $9 million of that are all the tax revenues that I just described. So we like to come up with a cost-benefit ratio. If you look at the overall benefits, both to the public sector and to the private sector, right? The wages being paid in the property tax revenue versus the costs, you have a benefits to cost ratio of 11 to 1. If you look at just the tax benefits to the public and tax costs, the ratio is 1.83 to 1, which means to say for every dollar of exemption you get $1.83 back in future tax revenue. So I believe that's the end of my slideshow. Happy to answer questions as they come up.
Thank you, Michael. We appreciate it. At this time, we're going to open it up for elected official comments and questions. Basically in no particular order, except for the fact that because I'm sitting in his seat, I feel it's appropriate for Mayor Harvey to be first in line, if that's okay with you. And then after that, I didn't, those of you that signed in, that's fine, but if you'd like to take it during the opportunity now to speak, that's fine too. So Mayor Harvey, thank you.
So I want to first start off by saying thank you to everyone that came out. It's very important to have an informed public. To Mr. Sims Foster, the IDA board, thank you all for what you do for our community every day. Thank you so much. And to my colleagues in city government, elected officials, thank you as well. So I want to first say that there was a lot of skepticism, a lot of criticism on behalf of the city council. And, especially when we looked at the pilot request, 90%, and, but the devil's in the details. And so we had a series of meetings with IDA, with Mr. Foster, and other persons. And I want to say that I personally support this project. And I want to start with a quote that says, high tides rise all boats. And I look at this project in that sense, because when we look at the current assessed value of these three abandoned buildings, $2.5 million roughly, the tax abatement is based upon a graduated abatement for the improvements that were estimated at $10.2 million. And just to put things in context, these three buildings, as was said before, have been abandoned for a very long time. And initially, former city manager and I found out that the county had bought them and that they were going to be gifted to the college, SUNY Orange. And there were no discussions with us, me as the mayor, SUNY Orange, and the city manager, the former city manager. And we were like, whoa, wait a minute. The college is a non-for-profit. If those three buildings are going to be gifted from the county to the county community college, there's not going to be any tax revenue for the city. And so we started making phone calls and talking to potential developers, et cetera, because we want tax revenue. obviously. We want to continue to expand the tax base. We want to continue to decrease that milling rate and get the taxes down in the city of Newburgh. And that's something that I personally committed to when I first got elected in 2016 because I'm a homeowner and an educator in the school district. So I was like, wait a minute. Okay, so some things happened behind the scenes, and the county was going to offer one of the 3 buildings to a developer who sent in a proposal. And then, according to my knowledge, the community college was like, wait a minute, if we don't get all 3. And then it became this debate behind the scenes. And then that led to where we are now, to developers putting in for these 3 buildings. And it went through the process through the IDA, and Sim Foster's concept and development was chosen. And so, with that being said, I do want to point out the fact that in year 1, as was stated earlier in the cost-benefit analysis, we're talking about $175,000 in the very first year, with 2% increases starting in year 2, year 3, all the way to year 7, and then there's an 80% tax abatement, and then it goes down to 70, and right on down to, full tax ratables after year 12, which is year 13. One other quick point to put things into context: in 2012, and I'm not mentioning any names, I'm not mentioning any developers' names, but in all transparency, in 2012, the city council approved a project on Broadway, and that was a 30-year pilot with $45,000 in tax revenue for 30 years. Okay, and there's ongoing litigation about that, and I'm going to leave that right there. And then years prior, there was a 10-year pilot on that beautiful waterfront and all those existing waterfront properties, because when I arrived in the city of Newburgh as a teenager in 1991, the first place that my family lived was at 14 Washington Place, right behind the Newburgh Police Department. And those condos are there. Mr. Mandel was the owner, and we rented from Mr. Mandel, who has since passed away. But that waterfront was barren land. All they had was gullies and the Front Street building, which is now partly Billy Joe's. It was barren land when I moved here in 1991 as a teenager. And that waterfront that we all know and love and have the best views of the Hudson on the west bank of the Hudson, those businesses had a 10-year pilot, $0 for 10 years in tax revenue to this city. And so that kind of, puts things, I hope, in perspective of some of the previous pilots that have taken place in the history of Newburgh, in recent history. And then the last thing, we were in discussion, the city council and myself and Sims Foster and the IDA and the county, was that, again, obviously there's going to be some more employment opportunities. There's workforce development. There's going to be a partnership, as was mentioned, with the college for culinary arts, for hotel management, hospitality, and not just entry-level positions. There's also discussion of tree plantings, food for the food desert that we have in the city of Newburgh. Sim Foster has a non-for-profit organization that's doing a lot of things with food in Sullivan County. And because the council and we're in the city government, are very much interested in the large projects that offer community benefits. What are the community benefits coming to the city of Newburgh? Again, preferences for employment, trees, tree planting, keeping things green, addressing the food deserts that we have in the city of Newburgh, job training, again, employment, tourism, amenities that are going to be on site at the campus of the hotels if this project moves forward. Those amenities and some of those sites will be open to the public. There was talks of a food truck, patio greens for the public, and then also if they move forward with the bowling alley in the project, that the public may have access to that, of course, with small fees to participate in something like that. And so that was a lot of the focus. What can we do? What they can potentially do that's community focused, a community benefit to the city, and also be an attractor for people from outside of the city to come to the city of Newburgh for tourism, because from my perspective, we want the world to come to Newburgh, and that's part of our master 10-year plan, and it's also part of our downtown revitalization plan, and bring connectivity from the foot of Broadway to the waterfront. And lastly, I want to say, not only do we have the best view of the Hudson River, which is picturesque, but we're the only city of the Hudson Valley and the river cities that have the deep water ports. And if anyone remembers from this summer, we had one of the largest and most expensive yachts docked at our city for weeks. And that's a testament to what the potential tourism opportunities are, bringing the largest cruise ships into the city of Newburgh to see our Hasbrook House, to visit our small businesses and shops on the Liberty Street corridor and on South Street and up Broadway and throughout the city. This is a significant game changer, if I will, and it has historic potential. And again, myself and the city council were very, very skeptical when you first see the 90% abatement. But until you get into the real numbers as was presented just now and look at the cost-benefit analysis, this is going to be a great thing for the city of Newburgh. And I personally, I personally support this. And lastly, I want to say, men lie, women lie, but the numbers don't lie. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. It's Genesis Ramos, lifetime City of Newburgh resident and legislator-elect for District 6, representing parts of the city and town of Newburgh. I want to start by saying that, to piggyback off what Mayor Harvey just said regarding skepticism, I'll be the first one to admit that, when I first heard about the pilot request, I was definitely skeptical, and I definitely had my immediate doubts about it. But what I did, and what I would encourage, it doesn't matter, for, against, or however you feel, what I would encourage all of us to do is to, what I at least tried to do, and before I even stepped up here this evening, is to be fact-based. We all have our emotions. As someone who has lived here and has seen the marginalization of our community in many different ways, and very failed developer relationships in the past, and how our community has been taken advantage of in the past, I most certainly don't want that for our community going forward. And I'll also be the first to admit that I wish we didn't need a pilot, and that we had the leverage to not have to have a pilot. But it is projects like this that I'm in full support of that will get us to that space of giving us that leverage here in our community. And I do believe that. But I also want to bring something to the forefront. As someone who sits on several boards, including a couple of municipal boards, there is a big disconnect between the municipal boards and our city council, but our community at large. I think that we need to be more intentional, and I hold myself accountable as well, not just as an elected official, but also as someone who sits on municipal boards, that we need to do a better job at engaging our community so that our community is aware of the different processes and the different things happening, and not just when there's an issue at hand. Because then we're dealing with contentious conversations, and we're dealing with damage control, as opposed to engaging everyone from the beginning. So I think that's something that every single municipal board really needs to look at and be more intentional about. And so I really want to encourage that. However, to the developers and the IDA who's handling this request, transparency is extremely important. We need to understand that the distrust is due to historical context of corruption, and we have an opportunity here to change this narrative going forward, but it's going to take a lot of intention from the developer, from the IDA, from City Council to work collectively and to be very intentional about what that transparency looks like. I hear equity investors being thrown around. Like, I would like to know who those investors are. This project is not going to fix all our problems here in the community. It's not a cookie cutter solution, but it can be the start of diversifying our tax base here. Ultimately, I want what's equitable for taxpayers. Like, I've thought, could those abatement percentages be set at lower numbers sooner, for example? I don't know. I'll be the first to admit I'm not the expert. But I know that for most folks in this room, they want our city to move forward. We want what's best for our community, but we also want what's fair for our taxpayers. Like, I think of my mom and dad who are taxpayers, my brother, most of my family who are taxpayers here. We're all working class folks, and so we want what's fair for us as well. I want to talk more heavily, though, about community benefit. I think it's a term that's being thrown around, but I'll be the first to admit that I'm going to take it a step further and say that I really want to hold that at a high standard, one where we can set the bar going forward, because I think it's more than just saying we want jobs, or more than just saying this is what it can look like. We need community benefits that are enforceable and measurable, like how many jobs, not just entry-level jobs, but giving people jobs here that are of leadership positions that come with higher salaries as well. Being able to have community events, and again, I think about being able to to have an opportunity to set the standard going forward. But when I think of community benefit, I want to see this being part of the agreement and the contract. I want to see this being enforceable. I want this to be measurable. I want to see people from our community working there. I understand when it comes to construction and contracting, that tends to be more widespread. But when it comes to the daily operations of that space, I would really want that to be enforced and measured. And I really am being upfront and vocal about that. I also want to just say, for a point of clarification, occupancy taxes, those get funneled to the county. They don't come directly to the city. So as a legislator, I will work diligently to ensure that that is funneled back into our community. We need a clear agreement on that. Because as it stands now, it does not get funneled directly back to the city of Newburgh. So that's something that I do want to clarify about occupancy taxes as well. So that's all I have. And again, I really just want what's best for our community on every level. But I will be the first to say that I will be holding accountable anything that's promised, because we really need to move past a place of saying, this is what we're going to do, and then, 2, 3, 4 years from now, we don't hear from you guys again. And again, when we walk into these spaces, I want it to really be for our community and by our community, while inviting folks from outside of our community to this city that I know I'm proud to be from. Renee Mejia says it best, and I echo his sentiments. I'll probably die here. But I think this is an opportunity for us moving forward to be able to create more deliberate processes around what development in the city of Newburgh looks like that's equitable and intentional. Thank you.
Thank you, Legislator-elect. Senator Skoufis.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Board. I'm not going to repeat myself from last hearing. I want to focus on some new thoughts, and I will say, on a more positive note to start, I do think it's refreshing I go to a fair number of IDA board meetings. I don't just pick on you here in the city of Newburgh. It's a big Senate district, and weigh in on applications that I think deserve weighing in on. And oftentimes at these meetings, and oftentimes when there is a contentious application, there is a schism. There is a fight over the project itself. And in this case, most, if not all, the people I speak to are supportive of this project. So we're starting in a better place here. We're starting in a good place. I think that is something that deserves to be pointed out. That said, it is your job, and the applicant rightly noted, this is a system that he did not set up. He is simply applying to an existing system, an existing structure. It is your job, the IDA board, to judge that application. And it is your job, fundamentally, to get the best deal for the city. That ultimately is your job. What is the best deal we can get from this project for the city? I have two questions, genuine questions, before I make some remarks to that point that I just raised about getting the best deal for the city. The first question, and I know this is not discourse, so these are just questions I'm raising. Feel free to answer after my remarks if you like, but I know you're not obligated to, and I understand that. The first question is there any ironclad commitment that these construction jobs are going to be local construction jobs? It is my understanding that every other IDA in Orange County has in their bylaws, in their policies, a very strong local labor policy. Orange County IDA, Town of Montgomery IDA, Wallkill IDA. I am not aware of a similar strong local labor policy within the Newburgh IDA's bylaws. And so my first question is, are these construction jobs that are on the screen that we're all talking about as a benefit, are these going to be cars with out-of-state license plates on the job? Because if that's the case, then that's not a benefit. And the second genuine question I have is, how many, it was mentioned before, there were letters of support that were submitted. How many of those were form letters? And how many of those, simply signed by someone? Here's, basically a petition. You get a 30-second soundbite that's biased from whoever's knocking on that person's door. Please sign here. Versus how many of those were actually written by, submitted by individuals here in the city of Newburgh. It's just something that I think the board ought to be mindful of. Now, to my comments about getting the best deal for the city. I've heard a lot about need. This pilot's needed for this project to happen. And it seems as though there have been changing opinions over what that means over the past number of months. For starters, it's my understanding that conversations around a pilot began at 15 years. That's what was originally needed for us to get financing from the bank. Clearly, that's not the case. Now we're at 12 years. That's what we need to get financing. And this is all about not what I need, it's what the bank needs. So now it's 12 years. And now we have the consultant come in, do a reasonable test, and working with the applicant and the board, the 12 years, the depth of that 12 years, the depth of the subsidy was amended. So now, believe me, this third iteration is really what we need from the bank to get financing. The only thing that's changed from the last public hearing is the applicant has received $1.25 million from the state of New York. That's the only thing that has changed from the last public hearing, as far as I can tell. That's new money. As of the last public hearing, the applicant did not have $1.25 million, but here's the 12-year pilot that I need at 90% abatement for the first 6 years. So one would think, here we are at a second public hearing, there should be an amendment to that pilot application. I no longer need as much money in subsidies because I just found $1.25 million from New York State. But clearly, that has not happened. I suggest to you, I know that this is, something that you likely cannot actually include in your considerations, but I raise it because I think it's worth being mindful of. as all of these iterations of what is needed have transpired, perhaps then we should ask the applicant, well, if you exceed, as part of that reasonableness test, if you exceed what should be the expected average return for your equity partners, and this hotel, and this restaurant, and this ballroom does far better than what your pro forma documents show and what you are attesting to this IDA board, then perhaps give back some of the subsidy. That'll never happen, because we're supposed to socialize risk and socialize profits and not get the best deal for the city if you were to ask the applicant, whose assessment of needs have been changing left and right over the past number of months. And so what we need is the best deal possible. And I would encourage each IDA board member respectfully, and you all have difficult and thankless jobs. I hope everyone here who is in this audience understands you are volunteers. And so I recognize that, and I thank you for your service. But I ask you and encourage you that top of mind, the only question top of mind ought to be, what is the best deal we can get for this city from this project? And we talk about history. I've been doing this for 9 years in the state legislature. And as I said, I pay attention to all the IDA agendas. I get all the IDA minutes from all the IDAs that I represent. I'm fortunate to represent in the Senate district. I have never seen in my 9 years a 90% abatement for half of a pilot schedule. Never seen it. I don't know what happened 30 years ago or 50 years ago at various projects at the waterfront and elsewhere. In my 9 years, I've never seen it. And so everyone that we're hearing from the applicant side is talking about, well, the bank needs this. The bank needs a pilot. I assume, and I agree, that the bank needs a pilot. There needs to be something to do with property taxes to make this financially viable, this project. We're not hearing, at least I have not been told in my private conversations, in the conversations here that are public at the IDA board, I have not heard anyone say that the bank needs to see a 12-year pilot specifically. The bank needs to see a 90% abatement for 6 years specifically. All I hear is the bank needs a pilot. I assume that's true. Has the consultant spoken with the bank and asked specifically, do you need to see a 12-year pilot at a 90% abatement for 6 years? I guess that's a third question that I genuinely have. Did anyone ask that? And so I suggest that there is a better deal to be gotten. And mentioned before about community benefit package. I've seen lots of community benefit agreements throughout the Hudson Valley, throughout my years. And I always raise an eyebrow whenever I hear that. I would suggest whatever you are planning to spend in a community benefit agreement, and they're usually grants, like we're going to give $250,000 every year to charity and do, $300,000 for, different community groups, and keep your community benefit and just take that money and put it towards reducing the subsidy. So I have no interest in seeing a community benefit in terms of additional financial benefits. Certainly, I support benefits that speak to keeping the permanent jobs local, etc. But in terms of an additional financial benefit through a community benefits agreement, a CBA, that's silly. Take whatever you're going to put there and put it towards reducing your subsidy. So I thank you for your time. I hope I was not repetitive. I think I've raised new substance since the last time I spoke. I thank each of you for your time in hearing me out and in your service to this city of Newburgh. I know you have a difficult decision to make, and I'm optimistic that you will make the right one. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Any other elected legislator? Lujan.
Good evening. I want to thank the board. Thank you so much for everything that you're doing, and to the audience that has come out tonight. We've had a lot of already, some really great comments. But I just want to kind of echo some of the things that I'm sure that some of you might know, but some in the audience might not know. It was alluded to about the previous project, the Innovation Grand Street project that was originally slated to be there. A project that would have been really focused on workforce development, particularly on hospital jobs, trying to develop that, trying to get more in hospitality. Really a great project, but again, not a project that would have brought any tax revenue to the city. And in many ways, it had some great attributes, that project. It was really focused on jobs. It was really focused on, hey, what is the thing that the city of Newburgh really needs? It needs good paying jobs. We want to make sure that people have careers that they're proud of, that they can continue to live here and work here and raise their families here. Because that's what we all want, right? We want to be able to make sure that our community members have a living wage and that they're happy and that they're able to raise their kids here. And so workforce development is one of the biggest things that we're seeing, and it's a great concept. Unfortunately, that project didn't go. And I'm going to say I'll be full disclosure, I was fully supportive of that project, 100%. While it didn't have the taxes, it was a project that really talked about every single person in our community. That being said, this project does offer a lot. This project offers a possibility of us boosting our community and putting it in the place that we all want it to be. We want to make sure that we're attracting people to our community. We have the most beautiful waterfront in the region. We have Washington headquarters. We have a rich history, the largest historic district outside of New York City. This is a community that we love. Everyone here who's here, you're here because you love this community. I've grown up here most of my life. My family's been here for over 30 years. I can tell you, I've seen the Newburgh of 30 years ago, and we've all had those conversations of what Newburgh used to be like. Some of you have probably seen it way longer than I have. Some of you have been in these starting businesses here long before anyone really wanted to take a chance on Newburgh. But you're here. You've chosen to be here, and I'm happy. I'm happy that you've chosen Newburgh. I truly am. I'm excited about this project. This project. We had a moment where we had three projects that were put forward in Orange County. This project was by far the best project. By far. It had vision. It added workforce development, it didn't need to have workforce development. I was very excited that they had included that in the hospitality piece. That was something that showed that he was listening to what was necessary and what we wanted to see in our community. I was happy that he was offering to pay more money than the other people. I really liked that. I was glad that but I will say this, that project and what Orange County has paid for those projects over the course of years, when we bought these projects, these 3 buildings, we bought it for Orange County. We paid $3.5 million approximately. That's not what Foster is going to be paying. But you know what? We also understand that today's price is not, yesterday's price and today's price, those are not the same things. But to that point, that's where I'm skeptical as well. And I want to just kind of echo some of the sentiments that Senator Skoufis made a moment ago. We need to talk about what is the best deal, the best thing for the city of Newburgh. The reality is, anybody who works in real estate, you all recognize that prices have gone up. We are definitely not the Newburgh of 1 year ago, of 2 years ago, of 5 years ago, of 10 years ago. Newburgh is a gem. Newburgh has the potential that we've always known it could have, and we're not the price of even a year ago when this property was bought. And so, I want to just say, I know that everyone here, you love this community, and this falls on your shoulders. I know it's not an easy thing to do. I do support this project fully. I'm excited about this project. I'm excited about the jobs it's going to create. I'm excited about the businesses that are going to open across this city. I'm excited about people wanting to come here and wanting to raise their family here after visiting over a weekend or over a week or so. But what I'm really concerned about is still, what is that going to cost us? Because I understand fully that this property has never been on the tax rolls. But at the same time, this is an opportunity for us to really also bring more tax revenue into the community. And so 12 years, I don't know what the magic number is, but 12 years seems way too long. I know we've talked about 30 years, and I know we've talked about 10 for almost nothing, but 12 years seems like a long time. And so I just want to echo the sentiments of others who have said that and say, Newburgh deserves a better deal. And that being said, I do wish for this project to continue. I wish you best of luck, and I look forward to working with you and anyone else on this board to make sure that it happens. Thank you.
Thank you, legislator. Other elected officials? Am I missing anybody? Okay, I don't think so. Oh, so sure, yeah.
Yeah, I just want to give some rules on the way we'll be proceeding. So when we ask if there's a public comment, we'll recognize one person at a time. We'll be requesting comments from those who did not speak first at the November 4th hearing. If you have not spoken, you'll be asked to speak first to make public remarks, and then we'll move down the list. Please wait to be recognized, and then please state your name and address for the record. Please specify if you are a City of Newburgh resident or not. Again, the purpose of this public hearing is to solicit public comment. We're not here to answer questions. However, we will, during this public hearing, consider questions if we have the information to answer them. I will now ask if there's anyone in attendance who wishes to comment on either the nature and the location of the project or the proposed financial assistance being contemplated by the agency with respect to the proposed project. So again, just please state your name, your address, whether you are a City of Newburgh resident or not when you come to comment, and our chair, Austin DuBois, will be the one calling that moving forward.
Thank you, Chair. Douglas Yawn.
Hello, my name is Douglas Yawn. I'm a City of Newburgh resident at 6 Park Place. And elected officials, I think, are going to be interested to know this. This right here is a map of all of the pilots awarded by the City of Newburgh that I know of. For instance, it does not include the Broadway project that you brought up, Mayor Torrance Harvey. The total number of units is 1,596 units from 23 locations. Many are for 40 years, like the Varick Homes that was in 2012 when you started your term, Senator Skoufis. These pilots were awarded by the City of Newburgh without significant public comment. Foster Supply's pilot immediately contributes as opposed to almost all the before-mentioned 23 pilots, while providing temporary historic trade jobs specific to our historic district and culminating with full-time employment, while also generating sales tax revenue. I am 100% for this project and the help we can give to make up for the 50-year deficit of tourism here since the demolition of the Palatine Hotel during the federally funded urban renewal program. I support Torrance Harvey, Mayor, and Anthony Rice's comments as read at the beginning of this. Thank you.
Thank you. Michelle Bosch.
Just going to move it around. Michelle Bash, 87 Broad Street. I also own the Warehouse Restaurant on Liberty Street, and I'm the chair of the ARC. I want to thank the board for doing the due diligence. I know how difficult it is. And I especially want to thank the board for coming to last week's council meeting and explaining to the public what a pilot is. Because I'll be honest, I wasn't sure. So pilot is basically that for the first half of the pilot, you are paying the taxes on the current value when you start the pilot. You're paying that all along. What you are not paying immediately is the renovations, the value of the renovations and the work that you're doing on the building, which frankly are not done in the first few years. So then when you get to the 6th year, you've opened your doors, you're starting business, and you start gradually to increase the taxes paid on the renovations you did. You continually pay the current value of the buildings. That's important to know. That is not something that I knew, because the information given and the information spoken about and what made people so angry was they're not going to pay taxes for 12 years. That is not correct. Also something, and please interrupt me if I'm incorrect in this, I believe that the state of New York would award a 10-year pilot in any case. But with the
I will interrupt you because actually I was mistaken when I did that presentation.
Okay.
It's a 50%, and Todd, is Todd still here? If I get this wrong this time, please let me know. It's a 50% abatement for 5 years, and then 5%, it phases in the rest over 10 years. Is that right?
It's actually a 50% exemption in the first year, and then it reduces by 5%.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Okay, right, thank you.
Okay, so let's put it this way, and thank you for clarifying that, because it is confusing. The state would award a pilot, not a 10 or 12-year pilot, but they would award a pilot in any case. The difference is that by increasing the amount of time on the pilot, the city has the ability to control, to talk to the developer, to work with the developer. For me, that's very important, because as far as the ARC is concerned, we want to say so. We want to be able to see, and we have seen the plans, and they are absolutely spectacular. Everyone will be proud. One of the biggest benefits of this kind of project is that it will drive pride of place, the pride of being in the city of Newburgh. Now, I can say I'm not from here. We moved here in '97. The majority of people who have moved here see the beauty. They are excited by the potential. They see what can happen. And sadly, a lot of the people who are from here just don't see it. This project will bring that pride back. That is very important. As far as jobs are concerned, yes, I am sure that Mr. Foster will bring people from the city, but they have to know how to do the job. If you want in a kitchen a baker, for instance, that baker has to know how to bake. Otherwise, you can't just hire him. That manager has to know how to manage. They will train people in those aspects, and that is very important. And as you grow in those jobs, and you learn in those jobs, you will make the money, very much like the film boot camps are doing currently. These are industries where you don't necessarily need a college degree, but you need to know how to pull up your sleeves and do the work. That's what the film boot camp is doing currently, and that's what this project will do. So I thank you very much for what you're proposing. I am 100% for it. And by the way, those letters, although many of them are form letters, each one was signed after a discussion with the people who signed, so they knew exactly what they were signing. And some of those discussions were half an hour to 40 minutes long. Thank you very much.
Peter Fraze. And going forward, if I mispronounce anybody's name, just please correct me. Thank you.
Hello, thank you. Yeah, my name is Peter Fraze. I live on Courtney Avenue in the city of Newburgh. And yeah, I'm here to say that having read and listened to these presentations, I do still have strong concerns about this project, which promises speculative economic benefits and jobs that may or may not materialize, may or may not, as others have said, actually benefit residents of Newburgh, and all at a great cost to the taxpayers. I've heard the case made that this will be a good deal for the project's investors, and that it will be a better deal for the city than some of the other egregious tax giveaways that have been made or attempted to be made in the past, but I've not been convinced that that makes it a good deal for me as a resident or a homeowner or a taxpayer in the city of Newburgh. Using pilots as a tool of economic development like this means fundamentally that we're choosing to starve the public sector, the city government, the schools of money in order to get, hopefully, economic development. And I am not convinced here that these extremely large property tax discounts, for a hotel for tourists is worth it, will pay off. We heard here that, it can't get financed if it doesn't get this pilot. And why is that? Well, because property taxes are too high in the city of Newburgh. Why are property taxes so high? Well, I hear all the time from city officials and electeds and so on, well, there's all these people in the city, there's all these buildings, all these operations that don't pay taxes to the city. And so then the solution to that is to allow another private business to pay far, far less taxes than they ordinarily would. And it becomes a sort of a vicious cycle. So I am not convinced that this is the best deal we can get. I echo Senator Skoufis that we know that the developers come in here think it's a good deal for them, or they wouldn't be doing it. I'm not convinced that this is a good deal for us, the people of the city of Newburgh. And so that's why I can't support this project as it is currently constituted. Thank you.
Thank you. Daniel Atana.
Hi there. Let me spin this around. Hold on. My name is Daniel Atona. I no longer live in the city of Newburgh, but I'm here as a resident of Orange County because this project has gotten a discount from the county. It's also gotten a state grant, as you've heard from many of the speakers. So this really applies to everyone in the state. This is a project that is in the process of trying to get even more money out of the state. I've done a little work as an activist in Newburgh with Mid-Hudson Valley DSA, including brake light clinics, upcoming coat drive, which we have January 9th. If you have any coats you want to get rid of, let me know. When I do these events, I talk to people, and they tell me they are concerned about jobs, they're concerned about businesses coming to Newburgh, but they're not suckers. They want businesses that are going to come here and pay their taxes and actually invest in the community. So, a little history about Foster Supply Hospitality, which is the development company. This is not a struggling small business. They have 6 hotels and 2 restaurants across the state. They know how to squeeze government to get what they want. They went to the county and said, we need a $2.3 million discount to buy the buildings. They got it. They went to the state and said, we need a $1.25 million grant. They got it. They have another pending $2.5 million grant with the state and can access $2 million more in 485B subsidies. They will probably get those as well. Now they are coming to the city and saying that we really, 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 really need a pilot of $4.5 million in tax breaks spread out over 12 years. This is information that I got out of the Times Herald record, Senator Skoufis' statements, so take it up with them. Will they get the tax breaks they're asking for? That's the question in front of the IDA. Foster Supply Hospitality is a business. They are going to try to get whatever they can get to make as much money as possible while paying as little as possible. But that doesn't mean we have to believe them when they say that they need it. When is the state, county, and city going to say that enough is enough? Companies cannot have it all. They can't just get whatever they want. I'm asking the IDA to be tough negotiators. Don't just give them what they're asking for. Don't let them walk all over you and all over the city residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman-elect Martinez.
Thank you so much. I purposely asked not to go during the elected officials' comments just because, again, I'm here tonight as a lifelong City of Newburgh resident. Again, I want to thank the IDA board for your time. I know that this takes a lot of energy. I am here to ask the IDA board to consider a better deal, to consider negotiating for a pilot with a lower property tax exemption, as well as respectfully request that the numbers for this project be accessible to the public for full transparency. I would like to start off by stating that, again, I am in full support of this project. I want Newburgh to flourish, and I am in support of expanding our tax base. However, my concern comes with this 12-year pilot agreement and that was presented, adding up to $4.5 million in tax breaks. I am aware that the buildings were previously not on our tax roll, and I can definitely see why this may seem as a better option to receive something as opposed to nothing. However, to exempt 90% of the property taxes for 6 years is excessive, in my opinion. We should not accept these as our only options. We should not settle for this amount just because we've allowed for pilots with higher property tax exemptions in the past. From my understanding, the project received, again, I saw some shaking of heads in the crowd when these numbers were stated, the $1.25 million economic development grant from the state, the pending grant applications that can total up to $2.5 million. If this information is incorrect, again, this was released by the press. If it's incorrect, that's why I'm also asking for these numbers to be accessible to the public so we can be rightfully informed. And so, we can come with correct comments. And again, this comment isn't directed towards the IDA board, but more so to the public, where Newburgh should not be viewed or treated as a place where we settle just for any deal that is offered. We can ask for equity with dignity, and a deal that may be best for developers does not always equate to being a good deal for Newburgh. I would like to ask again that the IDA consider negotiating for a pilot with a lower property tax exemption, as well to make this information accessible, and for future projects to make the process more participatory. I would also like to ask a few questions regarding the jobs that are going to be created out of this project, and ask if they will be union jobs, if they will prioritize Newburgh residents, and what will happen if the jobs being promised are not fulfilled. I want to end my comment with, again, just stating that we deserve a better deal. And thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. And I do have a couple, first and foremost, thanks for mentioning it. I did mean to say earlier that all of the information that we have is on the City IDA website. You can Google Newburgh IDA. It's part of the city's website. And we have all the documents. We have Michael's analysis and reports. We have the application. So that's been publicly available for a number of weeks now. So definitely check it out. Feel free to call and ask any questions. And because it's been mentioned twice, we have been discussing the local labor policy earlier, like in this year, and then things, I'm just going to say, like we had Cher was part-time for a lot of time, and now that she's full-time, that's one of those very priority items on our to-do list for the local labor. And great question about what happens if Sims doesn't fulfill his promises. One of the things you get with a pilot agreement that you don't get with a 485B is the ability to hold the developer accountable to all the promises they make. Legislator-elect Ramos brought it up that she'd like to see certain things in that agreement. With a 485B, you just get it because you apply to the state with no conditions. With a pilot agreement, we can actually kind of solve this skepticism problem by holding Sims accountable to these promises. Thank you for that. Apologize. Fred Watson.
Good evening. Thanks to the entire board. My name is Fred Watson. I'm an interested party. I've been around Newburgh for the past 30 years. Currently, I'm on the board of trustees for SUNY Orange. I just finished a 3-year stint as the board chair. I was appointed by former county exec Eddie Diana, so I've been on the board for about 9 years. So I've seen this project intimately through the years from the viewpoint of being a board member with SUNY Orange. I've also seen this project because I used to occupy the space 47 Grand Street for approximately 15 years that Senator Skoufis currently occupies. I've been in the buildings numerous times over the years. I've seen how the buildings have deteriorated over the years, so I have a perspective from that viewpoint as well. My professional background is in the area of food service management. For the last 30 years, I've run contracts down at the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. I currently operate the crown jewel of small business contracts throughout this country, which is serving the cadets down at West Point. I do that with approximately 60 individuals that live in the city of Newburgh proper. So I've employed them, I've watched them grow, develop, obtain medical benefits, apply for mortgages, get new cars. So the reason why I'm here today is to talk about the jobs. What we cannot miss if we miss this opportunity, and I'm categorizing it as an opportunity, is the jobs. The jobs are what's really important. I happen to have been selected, along with one of my contemporaries in the room, Mr. Kevin White, by the county to review the proposals and serve on the source selection evaluation board on this particular project. I also sat on the Audit and Finance Committee at SUNY Orange when we were discussing developing these very same buildings. What we've determined was, and Mayor Harvey talked about this, that these buildings are very, very expensive to renovate. They're historic, they're damaged, and they need a tremendous amount of work. I understand what we're talking about, the size of the pilot, who gets what money, but what I want to talk about is the opportunity. We have an opportunity to change the face of Newburgh from the waterfront and bring it up to the city. We're talking about money here. This project is not going to happen unless we, the city, the residents, make an investment. I'm also a business owner. My wife and I, we own a business at 88 Lake Street. We're in the daycare business, so we touch a lot of communities. I was also selected to be a part of the charrette that we had in Newburgh about 10 years ago. We hired a Canadian firm to come in here and tell us how to develop Newburgh, tell us what we're going to do. We talked about it. We must have had meetings for 6 months. Nothing ever happened. What I want to ask this board is to make a decision, and make a decision that makes something happen in Newburgh. Don't allow these buildings to go and continue to deteriorate, because the potential, if we miss this deal, for you to find someone else another 10 years down the line is going to be extremely more difficult. We've got some of those buildings around town. We've got a church that won't get renovated because it just is in a state of disrepair. So other things that I wanted to talk to you about is there's tremendous potential for collaborations on this building. I also sit as the current chair of the Boys and Girls Club of Newburgh. And many of you know we're doing a building catty corner right across Broadway. I see this as an opportunity. We are going to have event space, and if we get this boutique hotel, we can use some of our space to work in conjunction. And the other point I want to bring out is I went to a meeting on the other side of the county at the new barn in Middletown. No longer do we have Anthony's Pier 9. So there's no large meeting and event space on this side of the county. This would be a tremendous opportunity. Of course, we have space at SUNY Orange that could be utilized. There will be an event space here. Boys and Girls Club at Newburgh, we will have galleries and meeting spaces as well. So this is an opportunity for us to attract that hospitality business, that event business, to the city of Newburgh. Once again, don't miss this opportunity. Let's figure out the money, but let's get this done through some mechanism. The other thing is, this project is transformative. I think the number is around 60 employees on a full-time basis. It's transformative for those employees. So think of that. When everybody talks about the money that the city won't be getting, they will be getting money. Those jobs will stay in the city, hopefully be spent in the city, so try to take that into consideration as well. Take a long-term view of this project. Don't just look at the pilot. Who would have thought that the waterfront was going to develop and be here as long as it has? And it continues to have future potential. We do this project, and it lasts the way that the waterfront has lasted. Think about the change that that makes for this community. So in closing, I would once again say to this board, I don't want to talk about the financial aspects of this. It's an expensive project just because of the nature of the building. Give some consideration to how we get this done. I don't know what it's going to be, but don't miss this opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Martha White.
Hi, Hi there, I'm Martha. My husband and I have owned a unit in the Foundry for, oh my gosh, almost 17 years now. And I just wanted to make a brief comment. I wanted to mostly talk about jobs, but I also wanted to, in response to the Senator's comments about, maybe nothing's really happened since the last public hearing, I just wanted to throw out there that lumber prices have gone up 95% since November 15th. And according to the Producer Price Index that was published last week, steel milled products have gone up 142% year over year. So sometimes things do change fast. Mostly wanted to talk about jobs. I've heard a few people bring up jobs, and I think that's an important component of what we've got here. So I was I've heard some, not during this meeting, but in some other ones, some people sort of speak kind of disparagingly of a hotel, well, that's not going to be good jobs, that's not going to be a lot of jobs. So I wanted to do a little bit of math and just throw a few numbers out. I was taking a look at the how much hospitality workers make, and I don't want to be cherry picking, so I just started with maids, figuring that's the maids/housekeepers as a category, because that's probably going to be among the lowest paid. I'm not trying to be disingenuous and say, oh well, this is a $70,000 a year job, but that's maybe one general manager. So the as of May 2020, the mean average hourly rate for a maid in New York is about $18.50. Of course, we know that the economy and the labor market have changed a lot since May of 2020. Within the past year alone, the broader leisure and hospitality sector has seen wages go up a little over 12% on a year-over-year basis. So that's it's an average hourly wage of about not quite $21, $20.76. I'll also throw in there that some of you probably know hotels in the state of New York are pretty heavily unionized, which is good. We like our union jobs. And the impact of unions on what these hotel workers make it can be pretty significant. So I dug out the data and I did a little bit more number crunching, and it winds up being, you wind up with an average of about $24.50 an hour. That's not terrible. And just I can send you guys all the boring numbers that are behind this if you want. This all came from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. I know there are private companies out there like Glassdoor and Salary.com, but I tend to trust the BLS data a little bit more because it provides a more complete picture. So just in terms of the jobs that this would be bringing, I have to say I'm pretty happy with what they seem to offer. Thanks.
Thank you. Michelangelo Damarico.
Hi there. My name is Michelangelo Pomerico. I am not a resident of the city of Newburgh, but I do live in Orange County. I am the county co-chair for Mid-Hudson Valley DSA, a volunteer organization with over 300 members across Orange, Ulster, and Dutchess counties. I am here tonight speaking in opposition to the proposed pilot being sought by the Foster Supply Hospitality Project. New York is the 10th largest economy in the world, with a GDP greater than the entirety of Canada. And I bring this up because I think it's important for residents of the city who are concerned about their local tax rates to understand why such a burden exists on the middle and working class. And I encourage people to contextualize these systemic issues in engaging on matters tied to local tax revenue and how we finance essential services, as well as taking agency as a New Yorker and advocating for better financial policy at the state level. As we see increased levels of gentrification threaten the ability for so many to continue to be able to afford to live in this city, it is a stark reminder that the systems we live with in New York and across the country are not built for working people. How can we justify tax breaks for developers and the wealthy while the working class continue to shoulder the burden of taxation and pay for essential services? And very importantly, I want to raise awareness on issues pertaining to labor, which has come up tonight quite a bit. How can we justify these giveaways with no guarantees of project labor agreements, prevailing wage, neutrality to unionization, card check, labor peace agreements, and local hiring for this project before and after its completion? When I hear 60 permanent jobs, I want to know if that's a union job. I want to know what that job pays. And I really appreciate the notes that were just provided, the comments that were just provided on the average pay. And I want to emphasize that, of course, when a worker is unionized, they stand to make a lot more than if they are not. And so, if a question for the board tonight is, I want to know if these labor provisions are not included in the proposed pilot, what is holding the developer accountable? And so, in closing, we cannot continue to entertain such inequalities in our decisions as policymakers and officials when the outcomes so heavily weigh on the lives of so many. And we must break from the traditions of economic planning that benefit a wealthy few and begin to do the work of holding developers accountable and making sure they pay their fair share. Please say no to this pilot and side with the people of Newburgh and not developer interests. Thank you.
Thank you. Anusha Mehar. Is Anusha still here? Oh, that's sorry. Rudy Rudio.
Hi, Rudy Rudio from, I live here. Sorry, I'm a little bit out of it because I need to eat dinner, but 90 Windsor Avenue, been here for 5 years. But the thing that's stoked me about this place is that it's so full of history, right? And we always talk about that, but we also don't talk about the bad parts so much. We don't really like to talk about that. And sometimes it gets brought up with the urban renewal. But there's a history of bad developers in this city, of bad property owners in this city. We're talking about it now with another building in the city of an absentee property owner. And obviously that's not exactly the similar case here. But that's why we are so skeptical about all of these promises that everybody gives to this city and why they want to not pay their taxes for it. All of these promises, the set of rules for the rich ends up not being the same. So they don't, I suppose maybe there's certain sets of rules and stuff. They're going to figure their way out of it. Not saying that you are necessarily doing that. I'm saying that we have a skepticism for a reason here. We have been hurt before. And I speak so passionately about it because I love this city. My family has been here for generations, and I hope that I can stay here. But Jesus, with the rent coming up and everything, I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully I can. And so, yes, the nature of development in this city has been such that it is extractive from the city. We saw it with the neighborhood that got demolished. The slumlords just were like, hey, I'm going to take your rent if you can't, and we're not going to fix these buildings. Now they're gone. We saw that with so many buildings where they're not being kept up on, and they're still being rented out in the various conditions until they can just be the money from the city gets extracted. And so I don't know the history of Foster Supply Hospitality. I hope that whatever happens, we get a good deal out of it. However, I just want to echo the feelings and sentiments that I know that a lot of us feel in the city of Newburgh who aren't business owners, who aren't homeowners yet. We just know we've been getting the raw deal, and a lot of us don't know if we're going to be able to afford to stay here because we keep getting a raw deal and such bad deals, and we're treated so much like that we should just take what we can get here. So it's, I'm not coming at you with numbers. I'm not coming at you with anything like that. I'm coming at you with the history that we all unfortunately know, and the feelings that we a lot of us have here. So thank you.
Thank you. Steve Strong.
Good evening. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak. I went to Newburgh Elementary Schools and currently live in Goshen. I'm a member of the Mid-Hudson Valley DSA, and as my comrade said, I think we all in the county and the state have a right to speak on this because of the subsidies and tax breaks. We are in a period where 40 years of an overall falling rate of corporate profits, deindustrialization, and neoliberalism have accelerated the assault on the living standards of the working class as cities and countries race to the bottom, bailing out and subsidizing big business. The threat of the authoritarian far right is still large globally and nationally. In cities like Newburgh, we must become rebel cities leading the construction of a new golden age of social democracy. I worked for 5 years in a hotel without a union and still have health issues from unsafe workloads. Cooks in my hotel experience racism from chefs, low wages, wage and hour violations, and unfair labor practices. When we tried to unionize, the company sold the hotel rather than give us a fair path to unionization. So yes, housekeepers can be paid well. They're the backbone of the hotel, but dishwashers are often paid less, just to refer to the statistics that are being given before. And a lot of those statistics include New York City, which has over 80% union density. And maybe in the hotel industry, and we don't have that in the rest of the state. It's very important that the workers of this city benefit from these hotel jobs, and that is only going to be possible if they have a fair path to unionization. As long as we have a Senate, as long as we have a judicial system that was created by a slaveocracy, as long as we have the legislature of the plantations, it is incumbent upon cities like Newburgh to be rebel cities and make sure any development here comes with car check neutrality agreements. There will be no labor reform until there's revolution in abolishing the Senate, abolishing the judicial system. You must take a stand in cities like this. I currently benefit from wages and benefits of having a union job in the public sector, and those of us in the public sector want the same for our brothers and sisters in the private sector where density is very low. So my question is, has Foster Supply Hospitality signed a car check neutrality agreement to ensure hotel workers have a fair process to form a union without intimidation and harassment? It doesn't matter the size we see in Buffalo, Starbucks workers unionizing. Even if Local 6 in New York City doesn't want to come up here, there's plenty of people in DSA, in EWOC, other organizations, IWW, that will organize. So the problem is not just having union jobs. There's 8 to 10% unemployment in Newburgh and 20% of local workers not having access to vehicle transportation. What is being done to guarantee the hiring from Newburgh's neighborhoods with the highest unemployment? The problem's not just with cars coming in from other states. We want Black and Latino workers hired to the best paying construction jobs. We want project labor agreements, prevailing wages to ensure all construction is done with local unionized labor, with just wages, benefits, and safety protections. We want the community benefits written into a measurable and enforceable legal agreement guaranteeing the working class of our community these benefits. The way you're talking about community benefits is hijacking from our movements that we started in LA, that the Hotel Workers Union and SEIU started. Capitalist developers lie, capitalist politicians lie, and their parties lie. But our class, the working class, will keep fighting back.
C. Joseph Raymond.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Joe Raymond. I'm not currently a resident of Newburgh, although I grew up here in the class of 90 in FA, and I have deep ties to the area. As I look at all these numbers here, the $2.3 million discount on purchasing the properties, $1.25 million economic development grant from the state, asking for the 12-year pilot that adds up to $4.5 million in tax breaks, I got to ask some questions, because the honorable mayor mentioned that how's it go? The rising tide lifts all boats. I'm not so sure I agree with that assessment. And the reason I say that is because that's great if you're Jeff Bezos come cruising up the river here in his $45 million yacht. That's great if you own a boat and you can do this kind of thing on, real leisurely. That doesn't help the guy over there on the raft, the guy over there who's struggling hanging off of an inner tube tire going down the Hudson because the current, he just can't fight against that current. So the labor questions that my comrades from the DSA have already spoken are very valid. We need to make sure that we're holding, these fine gentlemen over here accountable to their promises. Make sure that we're keeping labor in the city if at all possible, and unionizing that labor. And finally, I just want to have some assurances that that tide is going to carry up the working man. That's what the city is here for. The city is here to protect its citizens, its people, the working class people, the people who are suffering for hope. Give us some hope. Thank you.
Thank you. Kevin D. White, the Boys and Girls Club.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kevin White. I'm the Executive Director of the Boys and Girls Club of Newburgh. Our board chair, Fred Watson, was just up here. Thank you, Fred. He mentioned that the building on the corner we purchased, I think you see it from here, right? The old KeyBank building. Hopefully a year from now, we'll be cutting the ribbon on that building. The first floor is going to have a literacy center for children in grades K through 3 to make sure they're reading at grade level by the time they reach fourth grade. The second, third, and fourth floor are going to be the new home for the Newburgh Performing Arts Academy, where we teach dance, music, theater, and visual arts. I think I'm nervous. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. We're currently occupying the old American Legion building. Been here for almost 20 years. We got there, no one wanted to be on this block. Everything was empty. I applaud Senator Scoofus for moving into the neighborhood. Thank you. Brought the value up a little bit, and also shows courage on your part to do this. When we started registering children for our program, I would get phone calls from parents that said, "Where exactly are you in Newburgh? Because we're scared to come." No one wanted to come to that block because they were afraid. People still come and they're afraid. You got a high-level overview of the benefits of this project, the tax benefits, or the lack thereof. So I didn't come to comment on that. I want to give you a ground-level view of what I've seen for the last 20 years that I've been here. I've seen project after project come before the city that they turned down for God knows what reasons. Remember the mall coming to Newburgh? They said, if you don't give us a tax rate, we're going to leave. We didn't believe them. They left. I got to go to Poughkeepsie to go shopping, Middletown to go shopping. Could have had a mall right here. I think I'm getting a casino now, right? Okay. Not knocking that. But here's what I get now and what I've gotten for the last 20 years. We've encouraged people to come, and they feel better about coming here. The college moved to that block, brought up the quality of the neighborhood. This project's going to do the same. We still have difficulties in this neighborhood, and I just took some notes on what I've experienced for the last 20 years here. I have to come to work early to clean the neighborhood. There's garbage in front of my building, homeless people sleeping on the steps behind all of those buildings. I got there one time at 3 o'clock. People were having sex under the awning of the YMCA building, MCA building. And I had to chase them away. You would think they would have stopped when I got there, they did. Crackheads steal the pipes that heat our building. And so once or twice a year, my kids are cold in the dance class. This is what happens when you have vacant buildings. They get torn up continually over time. Pedophiles living in neighboring buildings. When I have little kids coming in with tutus on, and I have to worry about who's on that street. And now we have this beautiful project that wants to come here that's going to better this community, make it a safer place, because when you have people walking down the streets, people feel safe. This is going to make this block better. It's going to make this community better. It's going to make this city better. Those buildings haven't generated revenue for what, 30 years? And you're complaining that it's going to be another 10? Let's think about what it's going to bring. Community safety, community beautification, a job training program with SUNY Orange, jobs. The kids in the city of Newburgh, you know where they come for jobs now? To me. I got part-time jobs for them. These are kids who are graduating from high school or not, and there's nothing here for them. And it breaks my heart when they come back and ask me for a job, because I can't hire all of them. And here comes somebody who wants to offer an opportunity for our kids. What is there to think about? Why does this take so long? We still got an empty lot over here on Liberty Street. On Broadway, right? What happened to that? What were the promises that were made for that? And I watch people that haven't been here that long to see the damage that broken promises do to the people that live here, or these debates do to the people that live here. I've been here 50 years, off and on. And all I've seen is broken promises. The paranoia you hear in here is well earned. I've never seen a city or people jerked around as much as the people I've seen in the city of Newburgh. Broken promises, bad deals. Anyway, I can go on and on. I think I'm getting emotional. But I've been working with kids here for 20 years. And I wish I could say it's getting better. In a lot of cases, getting worse. You guys know the shootings we had a couple of weeks ago? I started a project at our club 10 years ago for the same reason. My kids were leaving the Boys and Girls Club, walking down the street, and they were getting shot. No one lived on those blocks around the Boys and Girls Club. It makes it dangerous when no one's inhabiting these communities. And so I say again, we have a project that's coming here that's going to take over buildings that have long been vacant, have attracted the wrong people, and we're debating whether or not we should do this. I don't care if they never paid a dime in taxes. This is the start of something bigger. Every time someone comes and they build something like this, it makes it more attractive for the next group to come in. Everything we've gotten here was because there was somebody who was willing to take a chance, to take a risk, to give it a shot. But I'll tell you something I know. We started this project over here 3 years ago. When COVID hit, we had to stop. The price of materials for that project raised the cost of our project by $1.2 million in 1 year. The price of our project went up by $1.2 million in 1 year. If you don't do this now, it doesn't get cheaper. It gets more expensive for them and whoever else comes after them. You might be getting a deal by doing this project now, because it ain't getting no cheaper. We almost had to walk away from this. I was running out of options. And I can imagine how difficult it is for you. I'm a nonprofit. I got better shots than you do at getting money, even though it's hard for us too. So I'll end by saying, let's not screw this up. like we have almost every other project that's become before the city of Newburgh, by worrying so much about the pennies, you're stepping over dollars. This is going to help us. It's going to make a difference. Those kids that get those hospitality jobs, they live here. I teach at the college also. And I teach the young Black and Latino residents of this community who tell me they don't know what they're going to do after they graduate. They're going to have to leave Newburgh because there's no opportunities for them. Somebody's coming to offer jobs. And you're asking yourself, should you do? I mean, I can't believe this, that we're debating whether or not you're going to let them come or give them the break they need to make it successful. I know it makes a difference because we had to get money to make this project happen. And like I said, we let a year go by, another $1.2 million. And I'm scared, and my construction crew is here. What's it going to be if it takes us another month? You know what they tell me? Kevin, I can't make any promises. So what happens if you let this deal go away? For the next person, it's going to cost more. And you know what they're going to do? They're going to ask you for more. So this is easy, man. It's a slam dunk. There's no way you should screw this up. I get the whole tax thing. I understand that. We should get the best deal we can get, but don't blow this by asking for too much, because they might walk away. And I'm not saying you do this out of fear either. If the deal is bad and they walk away, then so what? Right? But what I saw looked reasonable based on the numbers that I've seen. And yeah, the banks do want to see guarantees. Trust me, I know. The reason it took so long is because the bank wouldn't guarantee our money until we can guarantee that we can cover the cost of the project. And I imagine it's the same thing happening with you, right? You got to show them that you can cover the cost of the project, or they'll walk away. Anyway, enough said. I apologize for my passion, my nervousness, but this means a lot for a lot of people that live here. A lot of people come and go. I've seen people come in on a white horse as the new savior. I'm going to do all of this. I was here when they did the charrette 10 years ago, when they fixed up the hill. Remember that one? Where are they? The empty lot on Broadway, where are they? The Newburgh Mall, where are they? IBM? Yeah. I mean, we can go on and on about people that came here and made promises, and because we didn't do what we should have done then, we lost it. And we got this great opportunity in front of us. They're going to work with our kids, create jobs, and like I said, I can't believe we're debating this. It makes no sense to me at all. And I hope it makes no sense to you either, and that we do the right thing. And let's do something to help our city, because the result is more of the same, more of nothing. And I'm on the short side of my career now. My wife says stop telling people that, right? But I am. Been here 20 years. We're over there, and I call it ground zero. Broadway and South Street. If you haven't been to my office, I have bullet holes in my windows where I work. And I don't fix the windows, because I want to be reminded of why I'm here. A project like this, and the ones that come after it, will make this community better, will change it for the better, and will create jobs for people. This city is full of poor people. And you know what stops people from being poor? Jobs. You know what they're offering us? Jobs. I give out sandwiches, and I hate it. You know why? Because you're giving a man a fish, and what happens? He eats for the day. When you teach a man to fish, he eats forever, right? So we should stop giving people enough to get by today and give them what they need to build a great future. And projects like this can do this. Thank you.
Thank you. Cynthia Gilkison? Oh, sorry. Mark Sanchez Potter. Also looks like he's not here. Oh, I'm sorry.
Hello, my name is Mark Sanchez Potter. I live at 84 Carpenter Avenue. I guess this is just a rhetorical question presented to Mr. Foster, but are any of your other hotels unionized? I ask that because I also think that if this project is going to be approved, and I hope that more negotiations will be going on in regards to this pilot, but if it is approved, what will the labor agreements be, both in construction with local labor, with the building trades, along with those that are employed in the in the complex? Will those be unionized jobs, and what is the guarantee to this board and to the city that a union, will be allowed, I guess you could say, or will happen? Those are my only questions. The issue of organized labor in relation to this. If the board could touch on that, I believe you did earlier, and just putting the questions out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else here that did not speak at the prior public hearing that would like to make a comment? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the just two. So Johanna, pour you on.
Hello, everyone. I'll be brief because I did speak before. But I wish Rudy was still here. I think he left. I could clarify some of the history for him. In 1958, the federal government sent in federal appraisers to devalue the land of what became the urban renewal plot. So they sent in appraisers, they went into people's homes, and they said, hey, we know you bought your house for $15,000, but it's only worth $13,000, and the federal government will pay you $13,000 for it. Well, the program took a little while to get off the ground, and people got really nervous, and they started to sell at very low prices just to get out of the neighborhood quickly because they could see the prices were plummeting. And it turned the neighborhood into a ghetto overnight. So within about 5, 6, 7 years later, the place was truly a ghetto. And the people who couldn't get out and were stuck, really suffered the most. A lot of them then had their homes seized from them when the program really got off the ground in 1970, 71, 72. So anyway, just to clarify the history, he had it all wrong. So I think it needed to be stated. And then I also just wanted to tell you a little bit about the history of the buildings themselves. The Masonic Temple is a really special building. We in Newburgh have one of the oldest Masonic lodges. It goes back to the Revolutionary War. Baron von Steuben was original member of our Masonic Lodge, the Hudson River Lodge. It's a really important lodge history. They had several buildings in Newburgh. One of them was the Reeve House, which is on South and Montgomery Street, and it still has Masonic symbols in the building itself. But eventually they built this building here, and it's got a lot of history in itself. The building next to it, the YMCA, also Newburgh, we were one of the first cities to have a YMCA of our own. It was paid for all by citizens of Newburgh who wanted to do good things for the young men and women who were here. We've always been a working class city in Newburgh, going way back, stretching back to the Revolution. And so things like the YMCA and other charity groups were really important to the community. And that building is also the second major building that the YMCA occupied. The first one was actually built by Stanford White, the famous architect. Unfortunately, that was torn down in urban renewal, and this is what we have left. And then the third building, the American Legion, is also really special. It's named for Judson Galloway. He was a World War I soldier. He left from Newburgh as a young kid, and he volunteered. So while he was there in the trenches, a French unit needed extra men because the French were really decimated by the time the Americans entered the war. They were really hurting for soldiers. So Judson Galloway heard that there was a French unit that needed extra help in the field, and he volunteered for service. He left the safety of the trenches in order to go into battle, and he was gassed in battle, and he was the first person from Newburgh to die in World War I. And that's why that American Legion was built in his honor with his name on it. It's something really special. If you go down to Washington's headquarters, you can look down by the entrance of the Hasbrook House, and his family went to France. They took a piece of sod from France, from the battlefield, and they brought it here to Newburgh, and they took a piece of dirt from Newburgh, and they brought it to France to put a memorial up there as well. So it's a very interesting history. These three buildings desperately need help. They need attention. They need millions of dollars of work. This opportunity is a wonderful opportunity. He wants to do the right thing by these buildings. He wants to restore them to their former glory, invest in them, keep them beautiful and open. He's already talked about possibly working with me on some history displays so that we can have the local people be able to come into the lobbies and read some of the history of these buildings. And in 2019, I opened the time capsule at the Masonic Lodge, and we found a copper box full of treasures. So we're really excited to be able to put them in the lobby for people to be able to come in and see and learn about the history of the Masonic Lodge here. So I'm very happy that Sims Foster has offered us this great project, and I hope that it goes through. Thank you.
Thank you. Bill Fioravanti.
Thank you. I did speak at the last hearing, so I just, I think everyone knows I support this project, and I think it's a great thing for Newburgh. I want to see it happen for Newburgh. I do want to apologize. There was a young man that was speaking before, and out of frustration, I kind of had a little personal outburst. And it was really not towards that young man. It was really towards the source of the disinformation that's been coming out. And unfortunately, I just want to clarify a few of those things up. First of all, that Foster Supply did not get a discount from the county. They bid. There was an open bidding process, a request for proposals, and we received 2 proposals. One was for affordable housing, and the other was the Foster Supply project. And Foster Supply had the bigger bid. They also had a chance to negotiate with the county. This is the price that they got with. They didn't get a discount. This is what was yielded the best offer. I want to be clear about that. Also, Foster Supply did earn a $1.25 million CFA grant through Empire State Development. I don't know of another $2.5 million grant you're working on. Is there one? Can I ask you? Okay, that's a fallacy. Also, there was talk about how they could get this pilot and then they can get a 485B. It's a complete fallacy also. You cannot get both. They would get this in lieu of the 45B. So that's the math is just, it's funny math, unfortunately. Also, the idea that we're starving the school district. These buildings are a combined 311 years old. They were on the tax rolls one stint. I think it was like 26 years total. They were never generating taxes. They're called the Masonic Temple, the YMCA, and the American Legion. So that kind of tells you something. So this is not money that's being taken away. This is actually a little less of new revenue that you'll be getting. And of course, they're going to be providing bed tax, sales tax. And they are going to be, in a few short years, they'll be one of the highest tax-paying commercial properties in the city. So the idea that they're taking something away, that's not what's happening at all. It's 80% of something versus 100% of nothing. And again, as the mayor astutely pointed out, Innovation Grand Street was a wonderful project that I absolutely supported and worked on. That would have been zilch for eternity in terms of property tax revenue. And let's see, local labor. I don't know why the senator, I wish he had stayed because I wanted to introduce him to, can you just raise your hand, the Amends brothers? Okay, these are the gentlemen from Stand Back General Contractors. They're related, by the way, if you can't tell. They put the new roof on Safe Harbors. They are going to be building the new Boys and Girls Club, and yes, they're going to be building the Foster Supply Hospitality Hotel. They're local. They're from Washingtonville. They're incredibly ingrained in Orange County. Why? There's a suggestion that they're going to get labor from outside the area, especially outside the state. It's ridiculous. It's just creating falsehoods in order to make it sound better. So that's why that's it. And last thing, this is most important to me. Absolutely, I know Newburgh's history. There was absolutely, this is one of the reasons I'm proud to do this work in economic development, because there were a lot of bad deals for the city. Absolutely, that's the case. That's not what's happening here. That's not who these folks are. Ask anyone in Sullivan County, in the community, leaders, economic development, municipal leaders, they love the Fosters. They're honored all the time. They're crazy about them. And by the way, it's not just, yes, they created jobs. They helped save the Catskills, bring a new reason for people, young and old, to come to the Catskills. Yes, it's wonderful stuff, but they're also good people. Last thing I'm going to let you know is, again, the idea that they're bad people. They also have a nonprofit called A Single Bite. It's something they developed years ago to help educate young people in Sullivan County, the second least healthy county in New York State. Wanted to educate them on putting good things in their body, natural foods as opposed to processed foods. Well, and that was they would go, Mr. Foster himself went in plenty of schools in Sullivan County educating young people. Well, then COVID happened, and they had to pivot that work, and they found that young people weren't getting the meals they would get in school and things like that. So they completely pivoted. Their hotels were slower, no question, and they weren't serving as many meals in their restaurants. So they had their staff start preparing meals that they delivered all around the county to young people. They just, I think a week ago, I happened to follow their social media, I saw they passed 90,000 meals served in Sullivan County because of kids not eating because of the pandemic. So that's who we're talking about. Just want to clear that stuff up. Thanks so much.
Thank you. The list has been run through. Is there anybody that has not yet had an opportunity to speak that would like to speak? Okay, your hand went up first, ma'am.
My name is Elizabeth Vega Lebron. I live here in Newburgh, 284 Liberty Street. And I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for a pilot. Not because I started a business, but because I bought a home that needed extraordinary work, much of which we actually did ourselves. And we would not have been able to make it work had we not had some form of exemption. We estimated a certain amount, which is what happens with most of these buildings, but it takes you twice as long and twice as much money. So you're taking a huge risk. When we get an opportunity for either someone like me or a business that's willing to take that risk, we really have to consider that. I support this project because I think that our greatest opportunity for growth is tourism. I came for the history. I came for the community. And if there's one thing we need to build and expand, and I've seen your hotels, and I've spoken to people in Sullivan County, because we used to have a home there, and I'm very excited about it. Run, don't walk, and get this done, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sir, yes.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tom Amen. My address is 110 Moffett Road. I live in Washingtonville. Own a business in New Windsor. My brother, who's right over there, we were lucky enough to go to Bishop Dunn Memorial School, so we're very aware of Newburgh. We played baseball at Delano Hitch. We played basketball in a lot of the local areas, so we're well versed in the Newburgh area. And we went away and we came back, and that's one of the things that is important for people to remember, is we want people to come back here, right? So almost as we do in the Army, right? We want an arsenal, right? We want an arsenal of weapons, and in this instance, I'm not talking about weapons of destruction. I'm talking about weapons that Newburgh and the surrounding areas can use to better themselves, right? We have safe harbors, the Boys and Girls Club, the college, the hospital. These are all weapons that Newburgh has to better themselves, right? So, and it is of my opinion that this project is another weapon to add to the arsenal. I'd also like to point out that there was much talk about laborers and prevailing wage and things of that nature. In my business, I'm very aware of those situations. And of my experience, it is not the unions against the non-unions or the prevailing wage against the non-prevailing wage. It's a team effort. We have to do it together. We have to have an operation of some union, some non-union, some prevailing wage, some not. Because as a business owner, when you put your stake in the ground to do something like this, you're taking risk. And that risk does come with reward, but it's a big risk. And when you have to pay prevailing wages and things like that, that's an even bigger risk. And that's why a mixed batch that everybody gets a piece of the puzzle is the best. So I just ask that everybody understand that in order to add this weapon to the arsenal of Newburgh, that we just all consider what it takes to do that, so that weapon can come here and make not just Newburgh, but the entire surrounding area better. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who hasn't spoken? All right.
All right. After requesting if there were any further comments, I close this public hearing at 8:19 p.m. Thank you for attending.
Thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate it on behalf of the board.
Yeah. Just a note, we'll be also having our regular board meeting after this, but we're taking a small break, so if you'd still like to attend our regular board meeting, you're welcome to attend.
Good evening. Okay.